Well, welcome to today's episode. All right, Tanya, I want you to think back to when you were 5 or 6.
Okay.
You walk out into the backyard, you look up at the night sky, and thus is born your desire to be an astronaut.
Yes.
However
yes.
short-lived it may have been in reality, it kind of sticks with us for a while. Well, today we get to have a curious conversation with Steve Rader, who is the Deputy Director at NASA's Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation. Steve, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I got to ask, all of us at some point in our lives have dreamed of being an astronaut or working at NASA, and you actually get to do it. But what is it that led you there? Why NASA for you?
Oh, well, I was that little kid, dressed up as an astronaut playing with rockets. So for me, it was a lifelong dream. But interestingly enough, I actually didn't think I would be at NASA. I thought that was reserved for doctors, PhDs, and scientists. And so when I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, I just didn't expect I would get there. But then found a job doing mission control and ended up working on life support systems right out of school, and then moved on to software and then on to various other projects. And 30 years later, I get to work at the Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation.
So it sounds like a really interesting place to work. Can you tell us the origin story for this center?
Sure. So the center is actually, they work across NASA and across the whole federal government. And it came out of some work in about 2009, 2010, where one of our groups, our Human Health and Performance group, got a really big budget cut. And so Dr. Jeff Davis, who led that organization, went out to industry and benchmarked, what's working, how is R&D working, how is innovation happening around in industry, and came across this open innovation, this crowdsourcing. And so he ran pilots with Incentive and Yet2 and an internal crowd at NASA, and they were really successful. And out of that, there actually was some notice at the Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House, and they were also trying to kind of get the government engaged in open innovation. And they said, hey, you guys have some good experience in this. Can you stand up a center of excellence and help the rest of the government, as well as NASA, to understand these tools and start to adopt them? And so kind of that's how it started. And we've been going ever since, trying to learn more along the way and help projects across the government to use open innovation.
I was really impressed. You have 475 projects you guys have done so far. Tell me a little bit about some of those.
Oh, gosh. So these are crowdsourced challenges. So we use what we call curated crowds. So we actually have 19 different companies that we use that each have their own crowd, right? So Top Coder is 1.5 million software developers and data scientists, and Incentive is 400,000 problem solvers. GrabCAD is this community of like 7 million mechanical engineers and designers. And so we've done a whole series of challenges, like you said, and we have done everything from a logo kind of graphic for a project, all the way up to engineering designs, robotic arm designs. We've done data science algorithms, machine learning type algorithms to detect asteroids. We have done software projects to build kind of the latest and greatest software for the astronauts to use to track their nutrition. We've gotten concepts for how to pioneer Mars. It's really this kind of endless list of both types of projects and the kinds of problems that we're trying to solve.
So as we were talking and kind of doing some research, 2 projects kind of stood out to me. Honey, I Shrunk the Payload and the Lunar Loo challenge.
Yeah.
Explain those to me.
Sure, those are actually 2 pretty recent challenges. Honey, I Shrunk the Payloads is really interesting. Both of those actually we ran on HeroX, which is a crowdsourcing contest platform. Honey, I Shrunk the Payloads is about a series of payloads we're working on to go to the moon on very, very small robots. And so the payloads, what we want to do, the science, right? We want those experiments, they have to fit in the size of a bar of soap. And so, compared to these huge rack-sized pieces of equipment, we're asking for a really small profile. And so we put the call out, what could we do in science on the moon and package it down this small? And we ended up getting some amazing designs. In fact, we're just moving from kind of phase 1 where we actually selected 14 different winners who all had technologies that were just amazing and kind of helped us get what we want done. And we're moving them into a new phase that's going on right now that's really funding, I think, at about $1 million, a lot of these ideas so they can get developed and go work on the moon.
Tell me a little bit about the Lunar Loo challenge.
Sure. The Lunar Loo challenge is really interesting because it's actually the kind of second potty challenge. We actually had one, I think 3 or 4 years ago called the Space Poop Challenge. And, it's funny because both of these challenges have ended up being literally record-breaking participation. The first one, the Space Poop Challenge, which was about kind of how to deal with human waste in a spacesuit if you're in a contingency and have to live in that suit for like 6 days. That one garnered something like 20,000 participants and about 5,000 submissions. And it was just amazing, some of the stuff we got out of that. Lunar Loo just wrapped up. We just announced the winners last week, and it was about designing a toilet for the lunar lander. As you know, we're building a program to put a man and a woman on the moon in 2024, and so they're having to move really fast. And so the idea was to get a lot of new ideas into that early. And this challenge also was hugely popular. In fact, it had a regular submission as well as a junior category where we engaged school kids, and just got some amazing designs out of that, and the team is really excited with what they got.
I think what I really appreciate about these challenges is it provides an avenue for people to get involved who might not be on that kind of conventional NASA track, right? You think engineering, or you're a surgeon, that things like that. So I think it's kind of democratizing it, which is really awesome. You talk about open source innovation. It's in the name of the Center, collaborative innovation. How do you define that? And what are some of the challenges, and why has it become so important for NASA?
Oh, that's a great question. So we talk about open innovation, and what we're talking about is open meaning going outside of your normal group. So that might be just outside of your team to an open innovation platform that's accessing all the employees in a company, or it could be a challenge that's actually going all the way out to everyone in the world. And why that's important is that diversity is the key to innovation. You can get a lot of innovation out of deep expertise, but what we found is that's limited. And there's a lot of studies out there that show that if you really want to move the needle forward significantly, you actually have to get out of those very deep, kind of narrow domains, and you have to actually look around. Part of the thing I talk about a lot when I talk about this is that we are in kind of this unprecedented time of technology explosion. And we kind of look around and we know that, but let me just give it some scale. 90% of all scientists that have ever lived on the planet are alive today. Think about that. That's 9 times as many as have ever lived are alive today. And a lot of that's because the population's grown, a lot of countries have gotten richer, there's a lot more scientists and engineers that are out there. But also we have some new technologies, that span across different disciplines. Think about machine learning and cheap sensors and software APIs and cheap robotics components and additive manufacturing and blockchain. All of these have a few really interesting characteristics. You can go learn about them easily. You can go buy tools for them that are actually fairly inexpensive and become an expert at using them. But here's the biggest thing. They span almost every industry. Everyone's working machine learning. A lot of people are working additive. A lot of people are working drones and automation. And so what's happening is, in the innovation space, the R&D worlds in all of those industries are innovating. And they're creating more and more technology in each of these areas. And so what we're finding is, the real innovations are already out there. What crowdsourcing allows you to do is find the people that can connect the dots and actually find the solution that'll work for you. So, for instance, John Deere, who actually is doing some amazing stuff in machine learning and AI, if they had an algorithm over here in agriculture, I might see a presentation of it and be, that's great for them, but that's not going to help anything for me, right? But someone who understands their domain and my domain can get, oh no, if you understand what they're talking about, this can apply over here. And in fact, there's a study out of MIT that kind of gets into this. It looked at Incentive, one of the firms we talked about, and how often they solved problems and what the characteristics of those successes were. And what they found was 70% of the time when people solved a problem, it was somebody outside of the domain. So that diversity piece is hugely important, because the R&D method before that is put 5 scientists or chemists in a chemistry lab and have them innovate, right? Mm-hmm. And this says that's broken. But the other thing that study said was 75% of the time, the solution was already known. It already existed. It just needed to be ported over. Mm-hmm. So you talk about making it accessible. That same company just did a study, and they asked at the end of each challenge, would you have hired this person? Like, looking at their resume, in retrospect, would you ever hired that person? And 80% of the time, the company would not have hired. They would not made it into the company. And if you think about that, that says a lot about how organizations are really isolated from the people that can bring them the most value.
Okay, so then we've talked a lot about the good ideas and the challenges. How do you cull through the challenges? I mean, not the challenges, the ideas that are brought up that are just not good, like, and do it in a way where people still feel validated.
Right. Well, it's really important. It's funny, in the innovation space, just normal innovation space, not crowdsourcing, we always talk about you always want to be positive about an idea and not try to eliminate it immediately, which is kind of our pre-programming, right? We're always trying to figure out, why is this not going to work? But it turns out if you're not able to listen to ideas and consider them, even if they have holes, what you find is the real solution is usually 3 or 4 ideas deep. And so you have to hear the ideas that won't work sometimes to actually get to the one that will work. And so for environments where there's teams, we really encourage people to be careful with that, jumping on why an idea won't work. In the crowd, you are absolutely right. There is a curve of participation, and it's like mining, right? There's a lot of ore, but just a few gems, right? Just a few of the valuable things. And what you need is a process to get you there. So really poorly executed crowdsourcing takes a lot of work, because you get a lot of submissions, you haven't done your criteria very well, and you have to kind of spend a lot of effort to even find the value. We try to be very concise in what we're looking for, so the narrower the problem, the easier it is for us to solve. We try to have very clear criteria on what it is we're trying to look for, how will it be defined, what are the performance characteristics, does it have a mass, do you need to justify that and show us how you got your work and your answer. And then when we put it out to the crowd, it's clear, right? It's clear what they have to do. And then culling those folks that are just lazy. There's a lot of people that participate in these that they want to just throw their one-liner idea over the fence to you and hope that it becomes the new spacecraft. And, that's fine, but we quickly can cull those out. And in fact, in our contracts with these crowds, these like HeroX and Incentive and the rest, we actually have words in there that says, look, you're only going to hand us to evaluate those submissions that meet all our requirements. And we get them to kind of cull those. So for instance, Space Poop had 5,000 submissions. They culled those down to the top 87. And we were able to then take those, look through those, and then figure out which ones were the biggest value for us. Great question, though.
Do you see any primary incentives or goals across the projects that you guys have done?
So incentives are real interesting, if I'm understanding the question right, is in the crowdsourcing world, right, we call like 4 incentives to pull people in to work on a project. We call it the 4 Gs: gold, guts, glory, and good. And so for a lot of our challenges, it's about the money, right? We put $100,000 or $50,000 out there for someone to earn. But the best platforms actually also are playing on those other 3 Gs. So glory is, there's a leaderboard, or there's going to be a press announcement about it, and people want the limelight. They want credit for their idea. Sometimes it's the guts piece. You will be amazed at how many people just want to work on a hard problem. I actually had a conversation earlier today with a platform called Umdina, which brings together like 1,500 data scientists from around the world just to work on hard problems for free for NGOs. And they're just trying to solve hard problems, but it's this hugely talented group that's doing that not for the fame, not for money, but they probably are doing it because it's a hard problem and because they're doing it for the fourth G good, right? They're trying to do that to make a difference, to actually make their mark. And that's actually what we find is a lot of people, like I say, they want to be a part of what NASA's doing, and so they'll work on these challenges and devote really tens, if not hundreds of hours sometimes to their submission just at the chance. But we find they do that, they're also learning, right? They're learning by doing, and a lot of them you'll see multiple times. There's all these folks that I've seen on challenges, and they'll win one challenge, and then you'll see them on another platform, and they'll win a different challenge, and then you'll see them over here, and they just become addicted to this stuff, and it becomes their hobby. It becomes the things that they love to do.
Well, and I love that kind of reflects your history. I mean, like you said, you started off on life support and then programming. You've kind of dabbled in a lot of these different, fields that are all related, but different in their own right. Is there a part of you that does that help fulfill you and keep you creative as you go?
Oh yeah, I have the best job ever, just by the way, because I not only I'm a tech junkie, right? I love what's going on in technology, but what's really great is I get to work with 15, 20 different federal agencies on their hardest problems and the coolest things they're trying to do. And at NASA with all of the cool things we're trying to do. And I get to see what's going on in the open innovation and open talent and the future of work. And it is truly amazing. And one of the things that is starting to emerge is, while we in our education system have invested heavily in the very deep expert, and companies have done the same kinds of thing, we're finding more and more that the generalist that can kind of connect the dots is not necessarily more important, but more important than it has been, and that the need for those folks is really actually quite high. So there's some really interesting work going on there, and in the innovation space, you definitely see where diversity is really important. So a lot of these platforms are really interesting because they're starting to provide opportunities, and I think you said the democratization of some of this. I love that, right? Because suddenly people who don't look great on a CV, on a resume, or they are a minority, or they have a disability, are suddenly able to start to contribute not just to these contests, but to the new open talent economy, the new freelance and gig economy, in ways that just simply weren't possible before. And so I get really excited about that, especially when I see some of these platforms trying to actually make that happen, which I think is really great.
All right, we know you have an awesome job and that you probably work a ton, but we are curious to learn if you have any extracurriculars, because I recently learned, and just kind of wanted to share out, that Nobel laureates are 22% more likely to partake in things like dance, acting, writing, glass blowing, these kind of fun things that let your mind just kind of wander. So what do you like to do in your free time?
Yeah, well, I don't think I should be compared anywhere in the realm that you were just in, but I do actually. I'm a big believer that you should have multiple passions in your life, and so I've been a part of a 20-piece big band for over 20 years, and I play bass there.
So cool.
And I sometimes will volunteer to build houses and do construction, so I love all of that stuff.
Okay, I got to ask, why bass?
Why bass?
I mean, it looks cool.
Easy. Because it's easy compared to the other stuff. And, you get to, I love a good bass line. A good bass line is like, that's the part that matters. Can't go anywhere without a good bass line.
All right, so then thinking over the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, what is it that just really excites you?
Well, I tell you, one of my passions that's related to this open innovation piece is where we've seen these communities and these platforms that are bringing communities together going. And that's in this open talent marketplace, this gig economy. A lot of people don't realize, but there's a migration going on, a big, huge change going on in the world where we're going from a model of everyone works for companies in traditional ways to a large segment of the society working freelance, and organizations actually being much more liquid in the way they deal with labor. And I think as I've been working this, what gets me most exciting is this is really necessary. The rate of change is so fast that you can't actually bring in the people that you need, all the people with the different skills. You just can't do that in a traditional organization and still maintain that organization in the same way. And so these new freelance mechanisms are providing new ways for people to keep up and upskill at a rate that they can actually get those jobs that are being created by the automation, and that allow a path from where all the automation is taking the jobs, right? And so that's really exciting to me, because I think it does provide opportunities for people to live into their passion. It provides a little bit more positive kind of future compared to like the robots are going to take all our jobs and we're all going to lose our jobs, right? Which there is truth to automation is coming for jobs, but there's a bigger truth that there's a lot of opportunity coming. I tell a story that a lot of people probably don't know, which is Snow White was actually, that film was created by about 750 animators, and they made something like 2 million sketches, hand-drawn sketches and colorings for that. And we now have CAD, software that we can use where that job could probably be done by 10 people now. But if you look at the latest and greatest animation film, something like Iron Man 3, it's 3,700 people on the credits. When we get technology that makes things easier, we don't just throw the people away, we do more with it. And now that does require upskilling, it requires work, but there's a lot of really amazing opportunities coming, and so I'm really passionate about that, you can probably tell. But I think that's part of where the whole world is going, and we want people to live into the good parts.
So, I mean, you work for NASA. Is that something you see as being instrumental, this idea of the crowdsourcing and the collaboration as being instrumental to us living in other worlds, living on other planets?
Well, I would say it's important organizationally if you are an organization right now, you need to understand that the workforce and the way it's working is changing significantly, that innovation, to keep up with the pace of innovation, is not optional anymore. Everyone has to actually be kind of moving forward at a pace that they're not used to. And so using crowds for innovation is one of the key tools that we think is a way to kind of connect the dots and get those solutions faster. And then I think the other part to that is that we need to remain relevant. So not only just keeping us relevant in terms of how well we're working and producing, but also how well we're fitting into society, right? And so all of those are necessary to stay competitive. I'd say the other piece I didn't talk about there that's hugely important is the digital transformation and getting to where we can use those tools. That's going to be a huge factor as well. But they're all related and they're all coming together. So all of these are enablers for how the entire world is going to work. I don't know if it's the next 5 or 10 years. I don't know if anyone can predict much farther than any of that, but it's definitely going to be important in the next few years.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation with Tanya and I. And if you want to learn more about what they're doing at COSI, check out in the description below. We'll have some links. Maybe even we'll put some links into whatever the latest and greatest challenges that you guys are working on, Steve. Maybe get you a few more ideas. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve, and thank you so much for watching this curious conversation, and we'll see you next time.